Welcome in. Today I decided to do a little bit of a different type of video, and I thought it would be a cool idea to have different AI models rate my portfolio out of 10. Not only to see the little differences between how each AI model views it and analyzes it, but also to just see the different insights and strengths and weaknesses that each AI model believes there is with my portfolio. So getting right into it, the portfolio that you see right in front of you is exactly what each AI model is going to be rating. And we're going to go over the insights of 3 models today, that being ChatGPT, Gemini, then Meta AI. So starting with ChatGPT, to try to keep it as consistent as possible, I'll be asking each model the same exact question, and that is, if you had to rate this portfolio out of 10, what would you rate it and why? Same question to all the models, so let's see what ChatGPT rates my portfolio. I used GPT 5.3 Instant, and it rated my portfolio an 8.5 out of 10. This is actually the highest rating of the 3, but let's see the reasoning that it gives. They say there are a lot of things that I like, but there are also a few risks that keep it from being a 9.5 to a 10. What you're doing well. You're invested in high quality companies. Nearly every holding is a profitable, well-known growth company. There's good diversification across industries. With consumer, we have Amazon, Netflix, payments, MasterCard, social media, advertising, Meta, semiconductors, AMD, enterprise software, ServiceNow, transportation, Uber, consumer discretionary, Elf and Celsius, fintech, SoFi, marketing software, Zeta. That's much healthier than someone with 60% in Nvidia. Kind of a low bar to compare this portfolio to, but position sizing is disciplined. Your largest holdings about 13%. Nothing is 25 to 40% of the portfolio, where one earnings miss destroys your returns. Number 4, you let winners run. Some impressive gains with AMD, Zeta, Elf, ServiceNow. Don't know why they put Amazon, MasterCard there, especially Amazon being up only 3%. But the other 4 are very good returns in this time frame. They state many investors sell winners too early. Now I agree with that. I feel like this is a pretty divisive topic with investors about when to trim or when to sell out of a position in a company that you still like, but they simply have become the stock has become a bit overvalued. And that really is just a judgment call. That's why I believe you should constantly be running projections on your stocks. And even if you're in a very high quality company, if the stock price gets overvalued to a point where your returns are just not where you want them to be over the next 5 years, what your projections are saying, then even if it is a high quality company, like I trimmed a little bit of ASML recently, that's about as high quality of a company as you can get. But I believe they're a bit overvalued right now. Still bullish on them overall, but I decided to take a little bit of gains there. But I also understand why you wouldn't trim ASML right now. But basically just always be running your projections, and there's never any shame in taking gains in a stock. But now things that keep it from being a 10. They say there's a heavy growth tilt in the portfolio. Almost every company is a growth stock. You don't own much in healthcare, industrials, utilities, energy, consumer staples. When growth falls out of favor, the whole portfolio could underperform together. Now my rebuttal to this is, I primarily target companies that are growing very quickly, because even though in the short term they may be more volatile stocks, over the long term, I'm talking 5, 10 plus years, sentiment and whether growth stocks are in favor or not becomes irrelevant. And over a time period like that, there is a direct correlation with the company's earnings growth and their stock price. The growth of their earnings will dictate the growth of their stock price over a 10-year time frame. So I believe the key to outperforming over the long term is buying high growth, very durable, and wide moat businesses. Businesses that you can see being more relevant and still growing very quickly when you're looking 5-10 years out. And of course, buying these companies at undervalued valuations. And number 3, some holdings are much riskier than others. These are your speculative names, Zeta, SoFi, Celsius, Elf. And they do state I actually like all 4 companies, but they're much more volatile than companies like MasterCard or Amazon. Though they are backtracking a little bit and saying, though these are smaller cap companies, they are high quality ones. At the same time, I don't like the speculative label that it gives them, because when I think of a speculative company, I think of a company that is just not profitable whatsoever. The only company here that you could maybe make that argument for is Zeta, because they're not profitable on a net income basis in the trailing 12 months. But the other stocks, not only are they very profitable companies, they're also growing very quickly, and they have very real, very established business models. Elf is one of the most used makeup brands in the entire United States. Celsius has over 20% market share in the energy drink category in the whole United States. So these are very large and established businesses. And even Zeta's marketing platform is used by over half of the Fortune 100. That doesn't feel like a speculative company to me. But moving on, the final criticism is there's no defensive ballast. If we entered a recession tomorrow, you don't have much to stabilize returns. Companies like Berkshire Hathaway, Costco, Visa, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble. Not saying you need them, but they would reduce volatility. Interesting, it gives the example of Visa when I have MasterCard in my portfolio. Now, Visa does have a larger payment network business, but I wouldn't necessarily view Visa as a much more defensive company than MasterCard. But then with companies like Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble, these are not companies with fast growth. And though if I had them in my portfolio, they may stabilize my portfolio during times of recessions or bear markets, and maybe my portfolio won't go down as much during that time. But like I said, over the very long term, earnings drives share price appreciation, and you're simply just not getting rapid earnings growth out of a company like Johnson & Johnson or Procter & Gamble. So even if you include dividends into this, Procter & Gamble has severely underperformed the S&P 500 over the past 10 years. So these, quote, very defensive plays, though they reduce volatility in the short term, over a 5-10 year plus time frame, these defensive companies will, I believe, overall reduce the returns of my portfolio. So finally, what changes would it make? They said I would keep Amazon, Meta, MasterCard, AMD, Uber, and ServiceNow as core long-term holdings, and letting Netflix continue if you still believe in its growth while monitoring valuation. Kind of interesting to me that it didn't group Netflix in with all the other stocks I just mentioned. Like, it's just not as bullish on Netflix as it is with these other stocks like Uber and ServiceNow. Just thought that was interesting. Then watching SoFi, Celsius, Elf, and Zeta more closely because they are higher volatility positions. Then over time, just gradually adding 1 or 2 defensive compounders over time rather than making any major changes. That would make the portfolio more resilient without sacrificing much upside. Now, I mostly agree with that. Me and ChatGPT may have a little bit of a differing opinion in what companies would be good defensive compounders, but over the long term, I will add more positions to the portfolio. I'm not going to cap it at 11 stocks. Over the very long term, I'd probably like to get to around 15 positions. I feel like at 15 stocks, you're in that sweet spot to where it's a pretty concentrated portfolio still. But if you have 1 or 2 stocks that just don't work out well, then it won't just completely destroy your returns in the portfolio. And if a couple stocks do way better than you anticipate, then it would really bring up the portfolio as well. I feel like 15 stocks really hits that sweet spot. But now let's move on to Gemini's rating. I used Gemini Pro 3.1 Extended, and it gave my portfolio a 7.5 out of 10. So let's go over the good aspects. It's a lot of the same things that ChatGPT said: growth profile and momentum, basically saying most of the stocks in the portfolio are very high quality growth stocks, and the overall companies within my portfolio are overall high quality companies. Then disciplined allocation. No single stock is way too large of a position in my portfolio. Most of the positions are pretty similar in position sizing. But now the risks. Sector over concentration. This portfolio is heavily exposed to a specific macroeconomic environment. Because it is dominated by technology, digital platforms, and high beta growth stocks, a broad tech correction or a shift in interest rate environments will trigger significant simultaneous volatility across almost all of these holdings. Now here, I just believe these AI models take a more short-term view of the portfolio. So in the short term, depending on the market, a lot of these stocks do look like they trade kind of in unison. But I believe these companies are actually very diversified across different industries, across different markets. So I believe there's overall very little correlation in the potential earnings growth of these companies over the long term. So again, if you look at this graph, for example, you look at little specific points, it does look like a lot of these stocks trade in unison during these short time periods. But if we look at the price return over the past 10 years, all of these companies vary returns greatly. Even the companies that are supposed to be most similar in trading with each other, like Amazon and Meta, over the past 10 years, their return profile still differs by over 100%. So I'm okay with even very significant volatility and my portfolio going down a lot in short-term markets. Because over the long term, I'm very confident in the companies I invest in and their earnings growth. And over the long term, their stock prices will reflect that. And then number 2, it's missing the anchor. There are no broad market ETFs like the S&P 500 acting as a defensive core relying 100% on individual stock picking, and that requires relentless, ongoing research and exposes the entire balance to idiosyncratic, company-specific risks. Basically saying the portfolio is very prone to judgment call risk, and they're saying if I don't put in the work, if I don't put in the immense amount of research into all of these companies, that the risk of something going wrong is higher. Which is fair, but as someone who does spend a lot of time researching stocks and researching all of these companies' business models and just being in the market every day, of course I will get some stocks wrong. But like I said before, with a portfolio of 10 to 15 positions, you can kind of afford to get one or two wrong because you'll likely have others that way exceed your expectations as well. And same thing ChatGPT said before with small cap, high volatility. The verdict, if the goal is aggressive, long-term capital appreciation, and there's a high tolerance for massive price swings, then this is an incredibly well-curated list of high-conviction growth stocks. It completely avoids the trap of being over-diluted by dozens of micro-positions. I mean, that kind of nails what my strategy is, but it also highlights that there is just key risks with having a very concentrated portfolio full of growth stocks, because you need to be constantly up to date with all of those companies and constantly researching them. But now let's go to the last AI rating, and that is from Meta AI. Here I used the Meta Muse Spark model, and it gave my portfolio a 7 out of 10. So why it scores well? They first say you picked a monster and held it, AMD, and kind of to ChatGPT's point where I didn't sell it too early and just let it continue to run. And I believe it'll continue to run, so I'm still holding AMD. The same thing here, balanced sizing, no positions are too large. Then number 3, there's a good mix of quality and torque. You have compounders like Amazon, MasterCard, Netflix, ServiceNow, next to higher beta names like SoFi, Elf, Zeta, and Celsius. That blend is why you're up double digits while the market's been choppy this year. But now the bad, where it loses points. It's almost all US and growth tech / consumer stocks. Amazon, Meta, AMD, Netflix, Now, Zeta, SoFi, Uber, Celsius, Elf. That's about 85% of your invested dollars riding the same factor: growth, discretionary spending, and ad / cloud / AI cycles. Ah yes, the same exact factor, because discretionary spending and AI cycles and cloud are the same thing. I don't know what it's really trying to say here because these are, in my eyes, different factors. Even advertising and cloud are very different things. What discretionary spending has to do with AWS, I don't know. But when that factor works, you win, like now. When it doesn't, there's no place to hide, no healthcare staples, industrials, energy, no international, no broad market ETFs. Again, don't know why it's grouping all of these factors because I would argue discretionary spending is not good right now. Yeah, the AI cycle is booming, these companies' cloud businesses like AWS are booming, but I would argue discretionary spending is in a bad place right now. That's why we're seeing Celsius and Elf stock just down significantly from their all-time highs. Just thought that was odd. Then number 2, they say cash is basically zero. That one's kind of on me because I don't keep my cash balance within my investment portfolio. I keep it in a separate high yield savings account. So it just kind of views me as completely all in the market and not having any cash in case the market gets more shaky. So that one's kind of on me. But then here they say you're buying near highs. Check your 52-week ranges. Amazon, MasterCard, Zeta, Elf, and Now are all in the top quartile of the year. That's not wrong, but it raises the risk reward going forward. Now, with Amazon, MasterCard, and Zeta, I guess they're not wrong there because they are closer to their 52-week high than they are their low, but they're still not that close. They're still more in the middle range. But then they also reference Elf and ServiceNow, and both of these companies are just not anywhere close to their high and are actually very close to their 52-week low. In fact, both of those stocks are still down around 50% from those highs. Just odd to me that it would try to make that argument. But now if we had to average all 3 of those ratings, we would get a 7.66. So overall, that is what AI would rate my portfolio out of 10. Overall, I believe some good points were actually brought up about the risk that comes with this portfolio, but I believe some of the other risks were just kind of nitpicks, and with Meta AI, I believe some of those risks were just kind of wrong, but overall, I believe some great points were brought up, and I believe it gave me a better external point of view of my portfolio. But I'm going to end this video here. Let me know down in the comments, do you agree with a lot of the AI's takes? Do you disagree with them? Do you agree with the ratings that it gave this portfolio? I want to hear all of your takes down in the comments, and I thank y'all so much for watching this video. I appreciate every one of you tuning in, and I will see you all in the next one.